Yep, it's 10:30 a.m. Thursday morning, and I'm just now doing my screencasts because I was working on more helpful stuff other than reading articles that other people wrote that pretty much say the same thing that we learned in lecture. But anyhow, so this is an article talking about relational databases, and it's kind of focusing on how the non-relational databases are taking up a storm, and the fact that it's becoming the new thing to do. So it gives you some background information on what a relational database is, um, but then it goes over the problem for relational databases, and it was scalability. Uh, it scales well on one server, but as soon as you get another or you start getting into things like server clusters, the fact that you need those relationships established and you need that join dependency, it becomes very complex and it's not, um, it stops being easy to manage. And there's little things about relational databases, such as constraints and stuff, that's why people use them was because it was the best option, but now you're getting to the point that um, the scalability is becoming so difficult to use in a complex environment that they're really it's not worth it. Um, so in come the new breed or non-relational databases, and it kind of goes down here and it has this little diagram basically going over the different structures, the structural differences between relational and non-relational databases. Whereas a relational database has the table, row, column structure, the key value databases have just that, and it also goes into the domains, which is like the bucket or in Mongo the collections of items and things like that. It also goes over the no entity joins, which we already know, which we're familiar with because, again, the relational data, but I'm not going into that too much because we already know about all that. So next, it starts talking about the benefits of the non-relational databases. So we've already kind of gone through these. We know that it's uh, really good for large corporations, things like that use the cloud, web services that have huge amounts of traffic. We also know that it's better for programming because we can relate to it more easily as it's a programming languages. It kind of matches the programming model a little bit more, whereas the SQL was a bit different. Um, but now it also goes on and it talks about the bad things about non-relational databases. And again, I think the biggest thing is the integrity issues because Mongo and other non-relational databases leave security mostly up to the developer, and there's little involved with that. So you're responsible for the data, and if the data is uh, improper, then you're going to have some issues. But now it's going into a benefit of the relational database, which was the data modeling process. And the data modeling process is more or less the structure of your logic. And basically, it was going into if you wanted to change that, um, relational databases make it easy for you, whereas non relational databases do not because it disrupts the data model. Um, and then compatibility. You can't really, I mean, relational databases pretty much work the same because of those relationships. They're defined and set in stone pretty much. But non relational databases, uh, they don't have the shared standards. So pretty much whatever you put in there goes. And you really have to know how somebody's doing something if you want to use or um, improve upon uh, anybody's stuff. You have to know what it's like in there. So, and then it goes over the limitations on analytics, basically saying that the key value databases basically will have lots of users and applications that use the same system. And if you wanted to get data from that, you have to, you have to basically go way out of the way to get this data. It doesn't have the analysis style queries that relational databases do. So there's that. Next, it goes on to these cloud service contenders, which basically kind of goes over the different types of non-relational databases, like Amazon Web Services and all this stuff. And it just basically talks about those, and I'm not really going to go into all that because there's a whole bunch of different ones. It's also got the non-cloud services, and there's Project Voldemort and Mongo and some others. And then they have these 4 pointers down here for making a decision, when you should use relational versus non-relational. And I'm just going to kind of read it here for a minute. It says, ultimately, there are 4 reasons why you would choose a non-relational database. And it's if your data is heavily document-oriented, making it a more natural fit with a key-value data model than a relational data model. If your development environment is heavily object-oriented, and a key-value database can minimize the need for plumbing code, basically structuring it for the relational database. The data store is cheap and integrates easily with your vendor's web services platform. And your foremost concern is on-demand, high-end scalability. So large-scale, distributed scalability, the kind that isn't achieved by simply scaling up. And then it's got this reminder, remember that the database has limitations and the risk you face by branching off the relational path. But anyhow, so it's basically coming to the conclusion that no, the relational database is not doomed, but it definitely has a new contender, and new in a relative sense. But as you can see, this was from 2009. Whoops. So anyhow, that's that. Hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.